Hey, thank you so much for joining us at our Crosspoint Church podcast. Now, if you're new to our podcast or maybe new to our church in general, we're just a bunch of messed up people who don't have it all together, running after a heavenly leader who loves us and meets us right where we are. We hope this message encourages you, builds your faith, and strengthens your confidence as you continue down this journey of what it means to know and follow Jesus. Enjoy this message.
Yeah. Wow. You know, I heard Bono talking recently about that song, and he was talking about how that song actually almost split up the band, almost split up U2. And he was talking about how when they were kind of writing it and putting it together back in the 90s, they were really trying to respond to some of the tension in the world and how there was just so much division going on. And even as they were putting this song together, they were not coming together on like what the song was to be about, how the chord structures were to go. And it really stressed the band. And they discovered something. They said, this isn't it's not like a hippie kind of idea of like, hey, let's just all come together and get along. It was like, no, this is about our differences. It's about how we actually really are different, and yet we have to get along. We have no choice. We have to carry one another, and it's not that we got to, it's that we actually get to. It's actually a privilege, and it just reminds us that we have that opportunity to be a part of being that kind of people in the world. And so that's what we're going to talk about this weekend as we continue the series. And we've been talking about kind of key relationships that need to flourish, two kinds of relationships. First about bonding relationships. Think deep and wide. We've been talking about deep relationships, bonding, like how do we take relationships into those deeper places? You know, in our friendships, in a couple weeks, we're going to look at like spouse to spouse, how to build a marriage that makes you better. We're going to look at parent and child relationships, 3 things kids need to actually experience some of those deeper bonds. So we're going to kind of continue to dig into those deeper relationships. But this weekend, we're going to take a break from that, and we're going to shift for a moment to bridging relationships. So if you think deep and wide, this is more the wide. This is the broad. How do we span and connect with people, that take some intentionality? And bridging relationships are about choosing to move toward people that are very different than us. And so that's what we're going to dig into. So welcome to Crosspoint. I'm really excited about this because this is kind of at the core of who we believe we're called to be and want to be in the world. And so if you're here for the first time, my name's Curt. If we haven't met, so excited to have you here. We realize there's a lot of places you could be. And let's make some noise for our online community. Excited to have you with us this weekend. So excited to have you join us. All across the city, state, nation, and world. Now, here's why we're kind of taking this break and looking at bridging relationships this weekend. One reason is next weekend, we're actually going to be doing this. We're actually going to be going out into our community and bridging into places we may not normally traverse and go to serve. And so next weekend is called The Church Has Left the Building. Who's excited about this? Yes, I am so excited. You're excited. This means there's no services here next weekend. So we won't be here Thursday, won't be here Sunday, won't be online next weekend. For those of you online, this is cool because this is a chance for you to join us out in the community. And I would encourage all of you, if you've not signed up for a project yet, right now, scan this QR code. There's all kinds of projects at some of our nonprofit partners, schools in the community, opportunities. These are family friendly. You can invite friends. You could, go with your small group and say, hey, we want to go serve together. There's even a Thursday night project for those of you that are the early weekend service, and I'm going to be there, so I hope you will be there and sign up for that. It's at Fisher's Youth Assistance Program. And if you're kind of wondering, okay, what does this all look like? How is this going to go? Take a look at what this might look like next week.
Our programs cannot run without volunteers. So to have your church come and dedicate this amount of hours and resources to help us pack bags helps get all of our work accomplished and ready to go so we can serve the kids.
Crosspoint, that was you last week. And give yourselves a hand. That was, or last year, that was so awesome. And we get to do that again. So we always say around here, registration's open. We always say we're a last minute culture. And what that means, it's not that we plan things last minute. This has been planned for a long time. What it means is a lot of times we don't sign up or get involved because, it's like, oh, that's way out there. It's not top of mind right now. Right now, this needs to be top of mind, all right? It's next weekend. I don't want you kind of being like, oh my gosh, nobody told me. So, I want you to make sure that if you can be a part of one of these projects, you're signing up for it, scan that QR code. Lots of cool opportunities to be a part of that. Now, one other thing I want to put on your radar that kind of is in this bridging mode as well is I'm going to be leading a couple seminars coming up here over the next few weeks called the Difference Maker Seminar. And originally this is going to be 2 weeks and 2 Wednesdays from now. And this is really for those who are kind of interested in going next level and discovering how God wants to use you to influence the people around you and get some tools on, sharing your story, how to help people understand who God is in very natural, normal ways. So if that's something you would like to do and like to have some tools on, I would love for you to join me on one of these. 2 weeks from tonight, from this week, is going to be an in-person seminar right here at the Crosspoint campus, but we just added a virtual one next week as well. Since it's Church Has Left the Building week, and you might be like, hey, I want to do some growth that week. Next Wednesday, we're going to have a virtual session, and so you can sign up for either of those. They're absolutely free. Again, lots of tools. It's a way to kind of go to a next level if you're interested in that. I know not everybody may be interested in that, and you're going to get a free book from one of my mentors and coaches, Nelson Searcy, and so those are coming up over the next few weeks. Now, back to our talk today, relationships. So we're talking relationships that are bridging and relationships with people that are different than us, and I think these are more important than ever. In fact, this is what enriches our perspective. These are the relationships that enrich our lives. These are the relationships that make our community and even our church community better. The problem and the challenge is it's natural for us to hang out with people that are the same because it's comfortable. Right? And so this is kind of how human nature works. We kind of group up with people that look like us and people that are, culturally from, same ethnicity or, people who worship like us or same socioeconomic status or whatever it is. And what generally happens is, when we look at people outside of whatever our culture is, it becomes an us-them thing. And we're like, man, those people are crazy. I don't know what they're doing over there, but I don't do things that way. Or I've never understood it that way. Or I hear this phrase all the time. Boy, I just don't understand why they're doing that. Which is always a good indicator. If you ever say that, hey, I just don't understand, that's a good moment to go, oh, maybe I should pause and try to do something to seek to understand better. Because what we tend to gravitate to is kind of minimize somebody who's different than us or even belittle or demonize them. And it just creates and contributes to this polarizing in culture. And the crazy thing is you can see this foolishness in other people. Like we can all see it, but you can't see it in yourself. It's nearly impossible to see it in yourself. So I want to give us a little example on this from one of my favorite movies, one of our family's favorite movies, Crazy Rich Asians. Great, great movie. And to set it up a little bit, this is Rachel Chu, who is an NYU professor in economics, but her specialty is gaming theory. Think about that for a moment, gaming theory. And she's, her boyfriend, a guy by the name of Nick Young, she's going to go back with him to Singapore. He's from Singapore for the first time to meet his family for a wedding. And she doesn't know that his family is crazy rich, hence Crazy Rich Asians. And so when she arrives there and meets his family, his mom, Nick Young's mom, is not a big fan because she is different than their kind of people. And it kind of just shows us how this tends to play out. So take a look at this scene. Dang, like so much right there. We just end right there, right? Like so good, so good. It's so easy to fall into these us-them narratives. And for you and I mean, we have these algorithms, we have, social media, we have echo chambers in our social media that just like affirm that the things that we already believe about ourselves and about others and tell us how right we are, how smart we are, and how crazy everybody else is. And ultimately what it creates is a very sick group of people and actually a very, very unhealthy culture. In fact, a few years ago, just if you've never seen something like this is absolutely crazy. This might blow your mind. I was reading an article, and I shared it with a few people on our team here at Crosspoint. And here was the article as it was on my phone. It was how marginalized communities foster resilience. This was back during the pandemic, and it was talking about how, communities that generally are kind of marginalized did better during the pandemic because they naturally know what it's like to go through difficult things, and so they just responded better during that season. So I sent it to my team. This is what it looked like on my phone. I sent it to one of our pastors at the time. His name was Mark Johnson. Some of you remember him. He's a black guy, and I tell you that for a reason, because when this article showed up on his device, seconds later, we were talking about it, and here's what it said up when it showed up on his device. Same article, different name. Like, just the algorithms in his phone changed the narrative, so he was getting a different message from the title of the article, which was social capital in black communities is often overlooked. Which actually, I said, man, what's going on? I said, that's not what I sent you. He's like, well, that's how it came through on my phone, based on his algorithms. Meaning it was feeding us things that align with what we generally look at. And for him, he read that, and he's like, yeah, I feel a little bit like, we're being overlooked. Like, here we are again, not being seen. It just goes to show how crazy, even the algorithms, like, we need one more thing in our culture to actually divide us. And the more and more this happens, and the more we keep our heads in these areas and in single news sources, it's like we get stuck in our little echo chambers, and we just contribute to this. And so how do we fix this? Like, how do we begin to address this? Well, first of all, we have to step way, way back. And we have to go, okay, what is it that's actually creating, this polarization? What's causing us to, in so many cases, demonize people who just aren't like us? And how do we confront that? And when I say confront that, not like in you, but like, how do we go, okay, how do I confront that in me, all right, in us? Because, this is all of us. This is an all skate right here. So I want us to talk about this today because I think we all want to contribute to a better world. I think all of us at the core, we say, yes, I want that. And for those of us that are Jesus followers, this isn't really optional. This is part of what we signed up for when we said, hey, Jesus, I want to follow you, because one of the things he calls us to be is to represent his character and light in the world. And what Jesus did was he built bridges to people, all right, that were different than him. All right, he built bridges toward people. He always ran and moved toward people, not away from them. To the point where they no longer were kind of an other, you, me, or us, them. It was like, no, we're together because we have a relationship. And that doesn't mean you agree with everyone. That's not the point. But that we respect those that we disagree with, so we're not contributing to the polarization. In fact, I love the way one person put it. This is a guy who was a pastor back in the 60s, 70s, a guy by the name of Dr. Zan Holmes. And he was in Texas and then eventually gravitated to California, and then he became a part of, he was actually one of the invisible giants in the civil rights movement, along with Dr. King and others. And I love his language that he used when he talked about how Jesus lived. He said, Jesus turned walls into bridges. All right, he said, when other people around us are building walls, trying to create things that separate and polarize, Jesus refused to do that. All right, he was a bridge builder. And here was Dr. Holmes' quote right here. All right, he said, if you want to build a bridge, he said, all you have to do, if you think about a wall, he said, all you do, a bridge is a wall turned sideways. A bridge, or when you have a wall, a bridge is when you just take that and say, okay, I'm going to turn it sideways. And see, that's what Jesus did in every encounter that he had. He turned it sideways in every relationship that he had. All right, and Jesus, one of the things he calls us to do is to mirror this as well. In fact, the Apostle Paul writes in this letter to the Ephesians, he says, what Jesus did on your and my behalf was actually being that bridge. He turned a wall, a separation, a chasm between us and God into a bridge so we could relate to God and be reconciled to God. But then he also goes on and says that he also turned that wall into a bridge so we could be reconciled to one another. Which is really interesting, because one of the things that Jesus prayed for you and me, he probably prayed a lot of things when he was on the planet. We don't have documentation of it all, but the one prayer we have documentation on is when he said this. He said, I pray that all of them, meaning all of my children, all humanity, may be one. That especially those of us that are Jesus followers, that a skeptical watching world would look and then take a second look because they go, oh my gosh, this is so dynamic. I've never seen this before. Where else does this happen? And there was such a diverse unity in this way. That people that would not normally be together would be together because of their common love for God, which kind of ties into what we said a few weekends ago, this idea of shared mission. Which is why this song the band did earlier, One by U2, I mean, it's so powerful because, this idea that, hey, it's not that we just are like, oh, yeah, I just got to get along. No, we are very different, but we still get to carry each other. In fact, Jesus' vision for the church, for his community known as the church, was that we would be a community of difference, not the sames. And so today, I want us to kind of dig into how do we continue to strive to be those kind of people. And we're going to look at something that Jesus did, something he confronted back in the first century, 2,000 years ago in the early church that I think we can learn from today. And so the story we're going to look at today includes Peter. And I love Peter. Peter is one of Jesus' disciples. I think I love him because he had like a bias to action. Peter would just jump. He's like, man, let's go get it. And sometimes he missed the mark. Sometimes he got himself in trouble. But Peter's the guy that when, Jesus got arrested, he took a sword and he cut off the soldier's ear. And Jesus is like, dang it, Peter, put the sword away. We don't do it that way, all right? Peter's probably like, oh gosh, I just thought I was going to defend you. He's like, yeah, we don't go by the sword. We actually lead by serving, not, by the sword. Peter was the one that when Jesus came to his team early on and said, hey, what's the word on the street? What are people saying? Who do people say that I am? And his whole team was kind of like hemming and hawing. They're like, I don't know. Some say this, some say Elijah. And Peter's like, Jesus, I'll tell you who you are. I'll tell you what they're saying. You're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus looks at him and says, Peter, that's exactly right. On what you just said, on that belief, I will build my church. So Peter's one of the first leaders of the early church. And so Jesus' dream for the church as a community was not just to be a bunch of Jewish Christians, but it would include people from all over the world, including Gentiles, which back in the New Testament, you had kind of God's people that he was working through, the Jewish community, and then you had everybody else, which was a Gentile. And so God said, I want everybody to be a part of this. Now, the rub right here is that, Christianity comes out of Judaism. And so this was kind of God's plan to show, the world what God was like. The people who were following him would be salt and light, and it would reach to all the nations, to every single person. And see, the problem was when Jesus came along in the flesh and walked the planet, the problem was those who were following him, they got the chosen part. Hey, we're chosen by God. What they didn't get is the rest of the world reached the nations part. All right, they hated the rest of the world. They hated anybody outside of their circle, especially the Gentiles. And in fact, they thought the Gentiles, people unlike them, who were spiritually outside of their circle, were dirty, contaminated. It's like they had spiritual cooties, like, oh man, we touch you, we're going to get contaminated as well. They literally thought this. Like, I can't eat with you, come into your house, touch you. All right, and so you'd never go into a home of a Gentile, which is why when Jesus comes on the planet, Jesus didn't do all that, and he kind of really, created some tension with the religious leaders because he didn't play by their rules, because their rules weren't God's rules, they were human rules. And so Jesus went into the homes of Gentiles, people who were on the outside, and people who were even considered unclean, and they couldn't believe this. So this early church, these followers of Jesus, you would think that would have rubbed off on them, but it didn't. All right, and so a number of years later, when Jesus is getting ready to ascend, he gives his mission to his followers, and he says, hey, I want you to take the good news of what I've come to do for all people to the world. But when they heard that, they thought the world just meant people like us, not the Gentiles. Nobody's going to want to include those outsiders, because what they heard, they ran through the filter of what they had been raised with. And all this stuff we're raised with and told, runs deep. I mean, they're like, we need to go around and tell everybody, but like within our people, right? I mean, not those outsiders. Nobody. God wouldn't even want those outsiders in here. So God comes along, he's like, I got to fix that. Like, that's a problem. We got to change that. So that's what he does with Peter right here as this first kind of big leader in the early church. And again, I think we can learn some things from him right here. So we're going to break this story down. We're going to jump into it. It's in Acts chapter 10, and it revolves around this guy by the name of Cornelius, and he's a fascinating guy. Here's the first thing we learn about him. It says, in Caesarea, there lived a Roman army official named Cornelius, who was the captain of the Italian regiment. And so 2,000 years ago, if you would have heard that category there, he's a captain of a Roman regiment. He would have been a centurion, which meant he would have been overseeing like 100 troops. People would go, oh man, dude's a big deal. All right, that's a big deal if you lived in that community. If you were Peter and you grew up Jewish in Israel, all right, and you were a Jewish person at the time, you would hear there was this Roman, leader, commander, and you would think, oh, he's an outsider. He's not one of us. All right, he's spiritually unclean. All right, he's sinful, contaminated. All right, and a Roman centurion in and of itself, you would have been like a savage aggressor. Like you have no regard for humanity. He's just out to destroy people. He's a bully. But that's not what we see in this story at all. In fact, he kind of defied the stereotype. Take a look at what it says next. It says this Roman centurion was a devout, God-fearing man, and as was everyone in his household. He gave generously to the poor and prayed regularly to God. So he wasn't this violent, savage monster. He was a godly, devout person. His whole household, probably 30, 40, even 50 people. He'd led his whole family in such a way they were devoted to God. Somehow God had worked in their life. He was a Gentile seeker. They were prayerful. They were generous. This word prayerful in the Greek language actually means like crazy prayerful. It's kind of like when you see somebody that's going through something, you're like, oh man, I'm going to pray for you. And most of us, we're like, we don't even remember it. We don't even remember to pray about it. He was like, no, I remember. I pray for you every day. He's crazy prayerful. He was devout. And this just shows how dangerous, stereotypes can be and how unfair they can be. But this is what we naturally do, right? It's kind of like we just take the shortcut and we all do it. And we hear something about someone and we just kind of like, oh, I know how they are. And we kind of put them in a category. In fact, let me kind of explain this a bit because, just to make sure we all understand. So I mentioned one category already. I'm going to mention another category. And you can think to yourself what you think of when I share this category. You can yell it out. You can yell it out if you want. All right, you guys ready? Ready to play along? All right, New England Patriots fans. It's me like a viral response. Oh, here we go. We know those people. All right, yeah, this is a natural thing, right? Pastors. Man, I didn't even think I'd get a response on that. Yeah, so you go say, hey, I'm gonna connect with a friend. You want to have some lunch with me? And they're like, yeah, I'm in. And they're like, hey, I'm gonna invite my pastor. Oh, hard pass. I think I'll sit that one out because there's a general stereotype. All right, and unfortunately, there's some of us that fit it. It drives me crazy, but oftentimes when I meet people, they look at me and they're like, oh, you're the pastor? I'm like, yeah, you're not at all what I expected, but there's a general stereotype. Cornelius would have fit into this category, right? He had a stereotype, and therefore, he's a perfect person for God to use to kind of do some correction, among the early church. And so here's his story. He's a devout Roman, centurion. He does what he does. He prays, and he would have been praying daily multiple times. In one of those times, God actually gives him a vision. All right, and at this point, he doesn't know Jesus, but this is how he finds out about Jesus. And so he interacts through an angel. In fact, here's what it says. It says, the angel replied to him, your prayers and gifts to the poor have been received by God as an offering, which means God has been hearing you. He sees you. Now, send some troops, some men to Joppa, and summon a man named Simon Peter. He is staying with a different Simon, a tanner, guy apparently likes to sit in the sun, who lives near the seashore. And so he's like, go get Peter, all right? And he's about 30, 35 miles away. And so Cornelius sends some of his men to go track down Peter. So they're on their way to get Peter. Now God has to get to Peter and kind of change his heart. So he's ready to receive this centurion because Peter would be like, you're a Gentile. I have nothing to do with you. I'm not going to give you any time, not even going to come close to you. So Peter is at this guy Joppa's house right here, and we're told as the story goes on, it's about noon, and Peter's hungry because they would have eaten in that time at like 10 in the morning and then maybe 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So it says it's noon, so he's like 2 hours overdue, he's hungry, and it says he's up on the roof of the house waiting, and he's hungry, and he falls into a trance. I don't know if you've ever been so hungry that you fall in a trance. You're like, I am so starved. But that's what happens with Peter, and while he's in this trance, he sees a vision, and it's kind of a dramatic one. Basically, he sees this tarp come down from heaven. It's got all these animals on it that people would eat, like pigs, where you get like bacon and pork chops, shellfish, like lobsters and crabs. And the problem is Peter has never eaten any of these animals before because he's a good, God-fearing Jew, and he would have a very strict dietary requirement back in the first century. So he's like, I've never eaten any of this before. So in this vision, he sees all these animals comes down, and then it says, then a voice said to him, get up, Peter. I want you to kill and eat these animals. And he goes, no, no, Lord. Peter declared, I have never eaten anything that our Jewish laws have declared impure or unclean. And I'm telling you, he's like, I'll never do that. You put some pork in front of me. I'm like, where's the sweet baby raised? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, count me in on that. But I'm not following those laws. Those don't apply to us today. All right? But Peter, he goes on, the voice came back and said again, do not call something unclean if God has made it clean. Another way to say that would Peter stop, calling unclean what God has made clean. He tells this to Peter 3 times. Hey, why are you doing this, dude? I said this is good, but why are you doing this based on your history? I need you to change your mind. Now we see this story, and it's kind of like, what's this story about? It's about food, right? Well, yes, that's the symbolism, but it's really about people, as we're going to see here. The rest of the story is about people. So Peter comes out of this trance, and God tells him, hey, there's going to be some people that are going to come to your door. They're going to want you to go with them. You're not going to want to go with them because they're people you wouldn't usually interact with. Go anyway. Immediately, there's a knock at the door. These guys come in, they're like, hey, we're here on behalf of our leader, Cornelius. He sent us to come get a guy by the name of Peter. They kind of tell him about this vision. Peter's like, I heard about it. I'm going with you guys, apparently. All right? And so they're going to make this trip. But the problem is it's near evening, and he's like, it's a long trip. Get this. He says, why don't you guys stay the night here? Outsiders, people he'd never interact with, he invites to stay the night, and then they'll do the journey tomorrow. So it says the next day they arrived, they get up the next day, they start their 30-mile journey. They arrived in Caesarea the following day. Cornelius was waiting for them and had called together his relatives and close friends. As Peter entered his home, Cornelius fell at his feet and worshiped him. I mean, Peter was like, get up. He said, stand up, I'm a human being. I don't know if he thought he was God or an angel or something, but he's like, get up, I'm just like you. So they talked together and they went inside where many others were assembled. So Cornelius invites his friends and family. They've got like 40, 50, 60, 70 people. I mean, large families at that time. And they're watching Peter go into the home of a Gentile, which for you and I, we're like, okay, what's the big deal? In 2,000 years ago, you read this and you're a Jew, anybody reading this is going, shut the front door. Seriously, he did not do that. And you're like, yeah, that's what he did. That's what he did. This was history making right here. He crossed the threshold into a home that was always known as people that were dirty, unclean, outsiders. You don't interact with them. Christian leaders had never done this before. They should have, but there was this massive barrier, this massive wall. It was such a big deal. Think about this. Peter feels obligated to talk about why he's there. Here's what he says. He says, Peter told them, it's against our laws for a Jewish man to enter a Gentile home like this or to associate with you, but God has shown me that I should no longer think of anyone as impure or unclean, so I came without objection. He's kind of like, hey, I got a pat on the back right here. Look, I'm doing this. As soon as I was sent for, now tell me what you sent me for. I mean, imagine if somebody came to your home. All right, and they come in, it's a guest, and they're like, hey, I'm here. Listen, I don't interact with people like you. I mean, I've always seen you as like dirty, nasty, gross, but I was told I should come here, and so I decided to do it. You know what I'd be like? I'd be like, hey, good riddance, dude. All right, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Like, you're out of here. Like, get out of here, right? Like, I don't know why you're here. But that's not what Cornelius did. Cornelius and his friends, they were more gracious than that. They have this conversation, which is really cool because this is actually what led to Cornelius' entire family actually coming to know Jesus. And remember, the whole purpose of this story right here, of these two visions, I mean, God orchestrated this for Peter and Cornelius to have this happen. And as far as we know, this was the first time any Gentiles, anybody that was kind of on the outside, had ever come into a relationship with Jesus. So this is great, right? However, it had been almost 10 years. The early church had been going for 10 years. For 10 years, they'd been exclusively just a Jewish Christian church because of all the polarization, because of all this stuff we're talking about. I mean, don't you think God would want this to happen? But they're like, oh, we're sure God doesn't want people that are unlike us in his kingdom. And it took 10 years. And when I see that, part of me goes, gosh, God was really patient. And then the other part of me goes, wow, how jacked up is that? And it's easy to see it, right? You're like, yeah, that's jacked up. It's so easy to see in other people, right? See it in Peter or others in your life, but accept the fact that like you and I do this too. All right, we have the same tendency. We all do this. And it's part of our broken, sinful nature. I mean, we grew up with people like us. We reinforce narratives that we have about certain people. Our echo chambers just keep reinforcing, and it builds up our ego. And, we begin to look at other people and like, oh my gosh, they're weird. I've never experienced that. That can't be authentic. They just don't get it. Maybe they're just stupid, right? Maybe they're just ungodly. They're not really godly people, whatever. We have all these reasons. And what we do is we minimize and we demonize people that aren't like us. It's simply human nature. But what we're talking about is if we want to live like Jesus, he didn't do that. So how do we do something different? Well, Peter's story shows us a couple things. that I want to kind of pull out right here. And these are simple, they're just not very easy. All right, the first thing is this. We have to push through the discomfort and build a bridge of relationship with people that are different than you. We have to get out of our little circle. All right, we have to push through the discomfort. We talk about this pretty regularly here at Crosspoint. All right, this sounds easy. It's just that most of us don't do this on our own. All right, it's easier to just be comfortable. That's why the discomfort part, we have to like push through the discomfort. All right, understand, it would have been so hard for Peter to have done this. I mean, his whole life he was raised that you don't connect with these people. They're outsiders. They're dirty, nasty. All right, God wouldn't even want them in your circle. He's been taught this his whole life. This stuff runs deep. Same with us. I want you to think about your street or your apartment or your dorm room, your hallway. There's probably a number of people on your street that are like you, others that are not, thank God. I mean, we live in a pretty diverse area. I look out my door and I see about 5 different ethnicities and colors, and I love that. It's easy, though, to pursue people, even in that context, that are from the same culture. Perhaps, vote like us, worship like us. It's hard to push through the discomfort and connect with people that are not like us, but that's what Peter did right here. That's what he shows us. And he didn't just do the initial push through. We're talking about developing relationships. That's where the real stuff happens. Peter did this. And we know this partly because Peter, he asked Cornelius if he could stay for a couple days. I mean, he actually stays for 4 or 5 days in a home he would have never walked into before. And you know what would have happened when he was there? They would have sat down together. They would have dined together. They probably had conversations, even prayed together, because that would have been a part of their daily routine. They probably went on walks together. They laughed together. You know what happens when those things happen? Friendship happens. And we know this because Peter later on talks 2 or 3 times about, oh my gosh, it was so amazing. This guy, Cornelius, came in my life. He was life-changing because, he realized I always thought something about this group of people and it was totally wrong. See, the other thing we learn from Peter here and Cornelius is that relationships, when we enter into them, they actually shatter stereotypes. Because see, once you know somebody, it's not easy to hold a stereotype. And so when you develop a friendship, you begin to realize, oh, these people aren't as crazy as I thought. When we moved into our current home 8 years ago, we have some neighbors next door that are very unlike us, come from a different part of the world, Sudan and Egypt. They worship God, same God we do, but different way. They're Muslim. They approach life different, eat different. Our deck, there's kind of a fence on a part of our big deck off the back of our house, like a privacy fence, and it just was like, this just doesn't seem right. It's between us and our neighbors that aren't like us. We cut that thing down. We're like, we want to be able to see them. We don't want any barriers there. And we began to really push through, and it was difficult at times, especially when they found out I'm a pastor. But it's been really cool, some of the relationship just over time. Like, we take food to them. They bring food to us. It's really cool. We love their food. We've invited them to parties. They invited my daughters and my wife, guys weren't included, to like a lady dance party in their basement a few months ago. It was crazy. Like, man, you want to see some dancing. And it's just been really cool to see this relationship develop, but it took pushing through some understandings about each other. But let me tell you about one of the coolest moments that took place. Back during COVID, my oldest daughter graduated from high school, and it was 2020, and so we were looking to do our graduation party outside in our backyard, and we were getting everything set up on a Friday. It was a beautiful, sunny day. The problem was the next day it was supposed to rain, big rain, in the forecast, and so we were setting up tents, and in the evening, our neighbors, Haim and her kids came out, and she said, "Are you guys still planning to do your party tomorrow afternoon? Because, there's rain coming, right?" And we're like, "Well, we are. There's like a window that we're hoping hits so we can get the party in," and she got big eyes, and she's like, "I'm going to go home and pray for no rain for Macy's party." I really want her, because this was a year where like all the graduation, ceremonies were kind of not in big settings because of COVID and so on. She's like, "I want her to feel celebrated. Once you have the party, I'm going to go home and pray all night." And she did. Kid you not, she did. Next morning we wake up, it's raining. But there's a window in the afternoon, and we're like, okay, we think this window just might give us some dry time. So we're out in the rain, finishing setup. Eventually the rain breaks, starts drying up, and then the party happens. It's a great day. It's crazy. We got this little window. And Haim comes over and her family, late in the afternoon, and she says, "Julie, this happened. I can't believe it didn't rain. I prayed all night. Every time I wake up, I'd be praying that Macy would be able to be celebrated today." It's just one of those cool moments. And then as my wife and her were standing there, we have a pond behind our house. She said, "Julie, look out at the water. There's raindrops falling on the water, but there's no raindrops falling on us right here at your party." oh my gosh, how cool is that? I mean, it was such a cool moment. I still get goosebumps when I talk about it. That came about, I mean, we have different backgrounds, religious backgrounds, faith practices, traditions, but we became way better neighbors when we were intentional to turn what could be a wall or a barrier sideways into a bridge. And that's one of the things Jesus calls us to do. He says, this is what Jesus people do. We value people different from us, and we have a humility where we turn that sideways. Let me ask you this question. And this is a good question for those of us that are wanting to live this way, live like Jesus. How same is your circle? I want you to ask yourself that. How same is your circle? Because Jesus had a vision for a community of difference, where there was a diversity. How diverse is your circle? How diverse is your world? All right, how same is it? It's easy. It's easy to be the same. If you sit here and go, gosh, I mean, for the most part, people I'm deeply connected to, it's mostly the same. I mean, if that's you, let me tell you what you are. You are what I would call normal. That's normal. Just normal. But see, Jesus actually calls us to be abnormal. He says, I want you to actually operate different. And so this week, and we're not all going to do this, but one of our next steps, I want to encourage you to think about what would it look like to diversify my circle. And you might be surprised. You might just be surprised what happens if the same two things that happened to Peter happen to you. Don't be surprised if you don't have a cool moment, like with Juliet, my wife, and Haim, where they had this moment where all of a sudden the rain's not falling on us, and they'd been praying both for that, and it's like, whoa, we had this really cool moment. I mean, it may not be as dramatic as Peter and Cornelius, where hundreds of people come to know who Jesus is, but it may be way cooler than you thought. Don't be surprised if you fall into a really cool moment. Second thing, don't be surprised if some of the people in your tribe criticize you for it. I mean, listen, we've had, even in this space, we every couple of years we bring an atheist into our venue and we do a conversation with a Christian and an atheist. Listen, I tell you, I've had pastor friends that have criticized me for that. They're like, what in the world are you doing? Bringing somebody that isn't faith-based, let them have a microphone. I'm like, we're trying to understand. That's what we're trying to do. Very criticized. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. This is what happens. This is what happens with Peter. I mean, the first Gentiles came into relationship with Jesus. You think they'd be celebrating, but look at what happened. It says when Peter arrived back in Jerusalem, the Jewish believers, they criticized him. You entered the home of Gentiles? You ate with them? What are you doing? They weren't celebrating. They were criticizing. And if we're not being criticized, then perhaps we're not really reflecting the character of Jesus. In fact, Kerry Newhoff, who our team has been doing some reading on, he talks a lot about culture and church culture and our culture today. He says, if you're not effectively sharing the gospel, representing the good news of Christ in this bridge, you will inevitably be accused of being too liberal, too conservative, too vocal, too silent, too partisan. Not partisan enough, you'll always be too something. And if you're doing it right, the accusations will always shift. You're too vocal last time, you were too silent this time. I mean, it will be criticized. I want you to ask yourself, what would it look like to resist, to be actively resisting that kind of polarization this week? To resist the tendency to just hang out with people that are the same, but to say, okay, I want to turn walls, barriers into bridges. I want to lay them on their side. In fact, that's one of our next steps. I want to encourage you, ask you to take your next step card. If you're tuning online, your app, scan the QR code right there, right now. And this is one of our next steps. I know not all of us are willing to do this, but this week, let me ask you, would you be willing this week, every morning for the next 7 days, to ask God to show you someone who is different than you that you can either see, listen to, or learn from this week, and then just journal what you discover. And don't go into it with like, hey, I'm going to be the expert and tell it. No, I've done that before. It doesn't work. It embarrasses you. It doesn't go over well ever. All right, just to learn. I mean, maybe for some of us, I know not all of us will do this, but would you be willing to do that this week? Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. You can have a point of view. It just means to be open, teachable, to reflect, the character of Jesus in that moment. For others of us, maybe a next step this week is getting in a Church Has Left the Building event this next weekend. We're not going to be here, so being, just serving alongside, bridging into our community. We just hope to see you next weekend, being a part of us being active in the community. And then last, maybe it's attending the Difference Maker seminar. You can let us know on your connection card. You can sign up with the QR codes if you're like, hey, I want to learn better how to build bridges and help people experience Jesus. In fact, as we close this weekend, we're gonna do something that I believe Jesus gave us to remind us of how we're so different, but we come together around our commonness. Jesus gave us a meal to share. And some of us call it communion, some call it the Eucharist, some call it the Lord's Supper, the Mass. It's all in one the same. But Jesus, he took a piece of bread and he said, every time you eat this bread from this day forward, I want you to remember my body that was broken for you. Meaning he says, I took all of your sin on my back, all of your brokenness. And Jesus didn't need to go and take all that, but he did it anyway. And he said, I actually willfully took that. And then he picked up the cup and he said, every time you drink this cup from this day forward, I want you to remember my life that was laid down for you. I established a new covenant, a new way to relate to God. Because for there to be a forgiveness of sins, something had to give of its life. He said, I'm giving of my life. I'm taking this chasm and I'm this wall, and I'm going to lay it down on its side and create a bridge so that you can actually have an on-ramp to God. In fact, the Difference Maker Seminar, we talk about that, is actually how the cross became that moment. If you've never seen that, again, I really encourage you to consider that. So we're going to share in this meal, and in a moment, for some of us, we do this all regularly. It reflects why in our relationship with Jesus. For some of us, we've never done this, and maybe this is going to be our first time. And so if this is, if you've been moving toward Jesus, or today's a day where you're saying, hey, I'm ready to follow Jesus, or I want to lean in and receive him as my Savior and my leader, you can do that by receiving the bread and the cup and just make that moment your declaration. I mean, that's always the invitation. Jesus says, will you walk with me? Let's do life together. I've done something for you so you can actually have a connection. You can be bridged to the Father. So let's go ahead and stand. I want to pray for us, and we're going to share in this meal together. Heavenly Father, thank you for your great love and for creating a bridge for us. There was a chasm we couldn't cross, and you saw that, and because of your great love for us, you sent your Son to lay down his life on our behalf. And we just want to celebrate that right now. Thank you for that. We thank you that this is a moment where, regardless of our background, ethnicity, that the commonness we share in you bridges all those chasms, and we realize we're one people. And so even in this moment, there may be some of us taking this for the first time and taking a step toward you. We just celebrate that, as we know you do. And so thank you for your great love for us, and we want to reflect that to the world this week. So we want to say thank you. Amen. All right, so Mark's going to lead us in one last song, and we're going to just kind of share our gratitude. If you're tuning at home, you can grab some food or drink, whatever you have, and share in this moment with us. God knows your heart on this. But let's share in this. We have 2 tables. You can come down the aisles. You can take a piece of bread and dip it in the cup. You can take whatever time you'd like. You can take it back to your seat, but let's use this to celebrate how Jesus created a bridge for us and reflected what he wants us to be in the world as we share our gratitude to him in song. So let's sing together as we share.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Take a moment to follow our podcast on your preferred platform, and be sure to download our app to stay informed on everything happening here at Crosspoint. And if you like what you heard today, don't hesitate to share it with a friend that might need to hear it too.